This is Steve Matley, your host. We are on KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM. If you miss a show live, we're on Thursday every 3 o'clock. You can catch us on the Building Solid Foundations channel on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, or the Android Building Solid Foundations app. We're also on your favorite podcast platform, and we usually pop up a few weeks after the show on YouTube. Today, we are talking with Brian Fox. Now, Brian Fox, if you listen to KCAA, you may recognize him from the Real Men of Real Estate radio show that airs on Sundays. He hosted 3 or 4 of those episodes, I want to say a few months back. He also was on the Real Men of Real Estate television show, which is on the Roku, the Amazon Fire, and the Android app if you catch us there. So you can check him out and see more about him. We were on the same programs together. Brian is a real estate broker and agent up in Orange County, Costa Mesa area, and he has a lot of different enterprises going on related to real estate, been around the business, knows it very well. Brian, welcome to Building Solid Foundations. It's always great to have
you. Hey, bud. Good being back.
All right. Orange County, we're not too far away from each other, but they are different worlds, right?
Always. Orange County is different than everybody.
That's right. That's right. So you are obviously a real estate broker. You are in mostly South Orange County area, is that correct?
All of Orange County we can handle very easily. We drip into LA County and San Diego County, but it's all based upon client needs. Mainly Orange County, like all of it.
Okay. And is there a specialty type of property that you are the expert in?
So we've carved out a bit of a niche for ourselves. We can handle everything from very low to very high end, but the niche we've carved out is kind of the everyman's property, the property that will usually be in the middle somewhere. And the reason why is because we also own and offer a complete staging and design business complementary. And so what we do is we help beautify properties to the point where people can have a better experience as a seller and a better investment as a buyer. So we've carved out that niche. What we do most is advice and design, because we can help them make their properties more valuable.
Okay, and so now when you say advice and design, obviously if I'm fixing and flipping something, then I'm going to need some advice on what do I put in to make it the most sellable and also get the most income out of the sale. If I'm going to hold it and rent it, then I'm going to need input on design as to what works for the broadest possible spectrum of potential renters. If I'm doing Airbnb-ing it, then I obviously need to make that work for people that are doing short terms. So your advice and design, are you targeted on a particular type of owner or buyer?
So everything you said is accurate. And what we do is we don't target specific people. We target the idea of having a long-term companion for what you're trying to create. And so an example, you just outline the entire example. If I have someone who comes to me and says, we're selling tomorrow, what do we need to do? That is one particular kind of advice. We're saying, hey, we're going to buy this thing and rent it long-term, but we're also thinking about doing upgrades. That is another kind of advice. So we advise on all of those things. We do it from a perspective of maximum profitability and less amount of risk and depreciation to whatever upgrade was put in. So if I have someone who says they're going to take their house and rent it out to somebody else, they say, what kind of upgrade should we do? We're going to go with maybe luxury vinyl tile, not hardwood, for the sake that luxury vinyl tile looks like hardwood wood, but it is very indestructible. It's easy to keep up. You don't have to worry about maintenance. Whereas if someone who's going to selling it, you might want to put in large plank fabricated wood because it has a much more luxurious design. People might pay a premium for it. So yes, we'll give that device based on what they're trying to do.
Okay. Now, this sounds kind of counterintuitive, but would you also advise people to do downgrades? They buy a house that's been highly personalized. Is that something that you have to face sometimes?
Sorry, when you say highly personalized and downgrade, what do you mean?
Meaning that you have a house and someone put upgrades in, but they're extremely personal. Let's say a purple tub. Let's say they, things like this. Maybe they've got built-in trophy cases or something that are very unique type things that maybe those are upgrades, but maybe that you have to remove things or downgrade things to make them more broad appeal.
Yeah, we that's in the selling process, not the acquisition process. So if we have someone who buys one of those properties, then they already know those things have to come out. That's more of the negotiation of what it's worth to me to take this on. But yes, what we do is if we're selling a property that has a very, let's say, unique feature that they think is very amazing, what we'll do is we'll advise as to why it should be removed because it alienates a population of people from being interested in the property. We just had one where the gentleman, it was his house. They grew up in the house. We sold it for the family, and the father who had passed away, he had a number of gun safes built into the property, meaning they had their own special spot drilled into the ground, etc. And they weren't coming out without some effort. So, but they alienate a population of people. So anytime you have something that so an example would be if you've got somebody who lives near the beach and they decide they want to do driftwood in every single room, beach pictures in every room. Everything is like soft seashell white, seashells along every window pane, like everything is beach. Yes, people do like the beach. Yes, you are near the beach, but what you have effectively done is made this look like a Hallmark card, it's alienating a lot of people from seeing what it could possibly be for them. So we consistently advise people to remove 90% of what's applicable to that particular upgrade because it will actually decrease the value we can get marketability wise.
Okay. And yeah, so the design means there's some things got to go in, some things got to come out, some things have to change. And how do you decide, do you have interior designers on your staff, or do you yourself have the expertise to create this, or are you just looking at what is in the magazines? How do you make these decisions?
So we have a full-time designer on staff, and I also do it in conjunction with her based upon our experience of what is marketably selling. So one of those things people talk about is you should take down your family pictures. That's a pretty common idea that people have come to is like, hey, you should always take those down because whatever reason they give you. And the reality is it a good idea? Sometimes. The reason why is because, quite frankly, most people don't consider the frame, the pictures in, or the way in which the pictures are hung. Things need to be very orderly and concise inside of a property for people to not look at something and say, well, that looks like a hodgepodge mess. Some people have a whole collage up on their wall of like 1,000 family pictures. You really want to just center the wall on whatever imagery you're giving it. So you want to pull all the stuff down that does not totally focus in on what you're trying to make the property do for you. So I do have a full-time designer on staff. We have some staff that backs them up, and then I come in behind and say, marketability wise, this is the best thing we can do to make sure you're getting the maximum value for your property.
Okay, and when I think of staging, I'm usually thinking furnishings. So obviously furnishings for showing a house. Do you also do permanent furnishings for, say, Airbnb properties, those type of things?
We have not come up against an Airbnb property where we have actually sold it with all furnishings. People have purchased them purchased the properties for that purpose, but they have not purchased our furniture. And there's a couple reasons why. One, people don't necessarily want to pay us what the furniture is worth. They think, well, this is used furniture, therefore I should get this for 30 cents on the dollar. The reality is, though, is that I can spend $10,000 on a sofa and I'll make $100,000 on the sofa for the next 5 years. So I'm not going to let that go for $3,000. There's no point to that. As far as buying a property furniture wise, mainly this is actually something that people don't totally understand about the design stuff and maximum value. When it comes to value and sale, people think square footage is the same as square footage value. Like if I have a 2,000 square foot house that's sold in the neighborhood, here's another 2,000 square foot house that's sold four houses down. We're worth what they're worth. And the reality is that's in no way true. It is only a bracket of potential. So if, let's say, one person has a flip property or a renovated property and it is immaculate, fantastic property, they thought of everything. And let's say that's a 2,000 square foot house and sold for $1 million for the sake of round numbers. And you have another house that's original, same size. It's not worth the same value simply because it's the same size. What people don't really understand about when it comes to buying and selling residential real estate is that it is size and space equals value. So what you can present to them as a lifestyle basically in the form of here, how's the space. So it's like when you go into like one of those most people have done, you go into those townhomes where it's got like a 30-foot vaulted ceilings, but the house is only 1,100 square feet. You'd swear it was 1,700 square feet because it has so much space. And the same thing if you go into a 3,000 square foot house and you're like, oh, this can't feel more, this is nothing more than 1,500 square feet because the walls are all tight. It's 6 bedrooms inside of a 2,500 square foot space. This is tiny. I can't even breathe in here. And there's too much furniture. So space has more to do with the actual value that someone will receive than size does in reality. And if you really do a good job with the space, which is where design and furniture, accents, lifestyle are embedded into the property, that will have the biggest impact on your end value.
Yeah, I find the other thing is also layout, because you can have
Yes.
2,000 square foot homes, and the layout of one can be a nice open flow, everything feels nice. And the other one is just so chopped up and messed up and inconvenient, and nothing seems to make sense. I've been in homes where you've got to take a trip through 3 rooms to get from the kitchen to the dining room. You're like, who designed this thing?
100%. And it's actually pretty funny. You can, that has everything to do with the decade in which they were built. If you take something from the 90s, so like you'll get this as an economic person, every decade had particular things going on in the economy, which caused certain material to be widely available and some not to be used. So like for instance, in the 90s, they used for doors, flat panel, very cheap doors, because economically at the time, that was the best product to use. And they used 1.5-inch baseboard along the whole house. Closets were not walk-in closets mostly. They were mainly somewhat walk-in in the master bedroom, but it wasn't very big. Now closets are as 100 square feet. Good.
I'm going to finish that after the break. We got to take a break, Brian. We'll be right back after this. This is Building Solid Foundations Radio. We're talking with Brian Fox, Real in Orange County, about staging and home styles. We'll be right back after this.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections. Hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
This is Steve Matley. Join me every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio Talk Show. I spent decades as a professional construction manager, business owner, real estate developer, and a college educator, and I enjoy learning new things from other people. We talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, but we cover a diverse range of other topics as well. Some of the topics we've discussed in the past few months include real estate investing, leadership, higher education, ADUs, marketing using technology, multifamily rental properties, business strategy, entrepreneurship. You never know who may show up or what they may talk about, so join us right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio. Hi, this is Steve Matley. As a construction professional, I know the importance of selecting the right contractor for the job. Power Solar employs only professional installers. Power Solar will provide a knowledgeable consultant to help analyze your current electric bill, identify site placement, and correct solar technology for your home. Contact KCAA Producer at gmail.com for a free financial savings proposal with no obligation, or call 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Again, that's KCAA Producer at gmail.com or 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We're talking to Brian Fox. Brian Fox is a real estate broker out of Orange County, California. He also runs a business of interior design and staging associated with helping people to sell their homes for a higher price and get a quicker turnaround on their listing. Brian, when we left off, I had to cut you off. We were talking about the the design influence by decade of different homes and how when people look through, things are very dated. And you gave some examples. And then during the break, we were kind of joking about some of the stuff that we see. And having been in the business for many years myself, both the construction side and the real estate side, development side, I know the trends. And I was mentioning I can pick a house or any building within 10 years of its construction date just by looking at it.
Yep.
Sometimes you can see where it got remodeled and upgraded, but it still fits that date because of the way it's designed, because of the layout, because of the materials that were used. And so some of the examples we were using were some of the finish items, but also the layout. So there was a time, so right now most homes have, I would say, 9 to 10 foot ceilings in them. There was a time homes had a 7.5 to 8 foot ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all of them.
Yeah.
So what era would that have been?
So, I mean, technically 8 foot is still code. Like code is still minimum standard is 8 foot. Yes. So that still happens, but that'd be any time 10 years ago and back 30 years. So you'd have a 30-year window of 8 foot ceilings, pretty much. Before that, it's funny. So like, for instance, Hearst Castle. If you go to Hearst Castle, you've been there, like the giant castle, William Randolph Hearst.
I know Hearst, yeah.
So obviously it's a castle. The ceilings are 400 feet, but the beds are all twin beds. Like all the closets are tiny. People were smaller back then. They didn't
have as much crap either. We have a lot of stuff. I learned that when I bought a 1951 GI home in Fletcher Hills area of San Diego. It was one of the tracks that was built right after the war, right? And single car garage. Now, adjacent was the next phase of homes that were built literally 2 years later. Those all had 2-car garages. Ours had 1-car garages. I remember asking the neighbor, I said, how did people function with a single outlet in the kitchen and like no closet space? And he said, look, he says, Steve, you got to understand, when these homes were sold, the only kitchen appliance anybody had was probably a toaster. We didn't have blenders, we didn't have mixers, we didn't have microwaves, we didn't have, Cuisinarts, any of that kind of stuff. There was nothing to plug in. You just had what was in the kitchen. And the whole house was on a 50 amp circuit. It was a 15 amp breaker for all the lights that were in the ceiling, and then like 3 20 amp breakers for all those outlets everywhere else. And that was it. And he said, nobody had anything to plug in. We didn't have computers. He said, people had one radio in their living room. And for Christmas, the kids would get probably some type of a clothing item and then one decent gift. And that was it.
Yeah.
But that was the life back then.
Yeah. Different times, man. That's what real estate does, is it requires different values over time. And that's why what's going on now is that idea of presentation is everything has taken over in the real estate business, which is what's made it very a celebrity related, commodity. I mean, it's celebrity estate is the way they do it now.
Yeah. Okay. So part of what you're trying to do is undate a house that is very dated. And sometimes houses, just by the architectural style, are dated, and there's only so much you can do without a major remodel, which isn't practical when you're selling a house. But you can upgrade the paint scheme and those kind of things. You can't always change the roof line. There's a certain, I drove through Claremont area of San Diego. I could tell all those homes were built in the mid to late 60s. Every one of them had those kind of roof lines, the single story with the Dutch hip roofs. And they flare up at the end. They kind of get a little up on the end of it, sort of thing. That was just the style they did back then. The era right before that, where all the roof lines were very shallow, they weren't steep at all.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do in every single property, doesn't matter which one we sell, what people are looking for today most, you and I can talk about it. And anybody who's been in this business, we could all have a nice roundtable conversation about age and what's really there, what's not really there. But generally the consumer doesn't see that. They see it if we explained it to them and said, hey, see this thing? That's what you're seeing. And they know it doesn't look modern. No, but they wouldn't be able to describe it. But so what they do is they feel a property. And so when someone feels a property, what you need to do, what we do is we're trying to emphasize our sellers' properties is we're going to invoke the feelings we want them to feel. And so one of the way we do that is there's going to be some houses have a lot of very obscure corners in space. We do use a lot of that space and we turn it into entertainment space. We may take a wall that is way out of the way, weird condition, and turn that into a very entertainment friendly bar wall with wine racks and a bar cart. Like you have to embed all kinds of lifestyle in the property, because when you do that, well, you're basically telling that person who's walking in, this is how you will live when you live here. And so when you do that, you improve the property's potential value.
And that's the big difference. So in the niche of real estate I work in, it's very much spreadsheet driven. There's not room for emotion. It either pencils or it doesn't pencil. And how much you like a place, if it doesn't work, you let it go, even though you think it's a really cool property. In the space you're working in most of the retail residential homes, that's a very, it's all emotional. And we tell ourselves it's logical. We tell ourselves it's about price. We tell ourselves about appreciation. We fool ourselves, but it's all emotional. It's about, this is the master bedroom of my dream. This is the kitchen where we can entertain. This is the best school district in town, the location of it. This is the backyard I can envision having the fire pit out there and the dog sitting under there. And as you're right, you're telling a story and you're selling a lifestyle, and it's all very much emotional.
Yeah, I mean, if people in real estate, if they did all their decisions very logically and calculated where they're living, they'd buy a 4-unit building and rent out 3 units and live in 1 unit. That would be the most economical way to live in real estate for residential. But no, the thing is that people buy Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, Land Rovers because they want to feel good in what they're doing for themselves. Real estate's the very same way when it comes to residential. I can't say everyone does that. Some people do actually buy a multi-unit property and live in one, rent out the next, and then they
They
move
tend
on.
to be more investor minded.
Yeah, they do. And that is a much smaller part of the population. But for the most part, people absolutely, they want the hard work they put in, the money that they make and they cough up to live. They want to live in a way that makes them feel good. So the objective isn't, so if I have a property, I'm not going to be able to shoot the value up, 30%, but I will be able to influence the amount of people interested and therefore increase the amount of consumers who want it and move the property faster. And the person who buys it will be ecstatic because they finally found somebody who's talking their language.
Yeah. And that's, but there's nothing wrong with it. I mean to, I'm not saying that's a wrong way to do things.
Not at all. Nothing.
So
It's
if
100% accurate.
if you're buying something to invest, then it really is about the ROI. It's about cash flow. It's very much a dollars and cents numbers game. Your home, and I this is where I differ with some of the real estate investment gurus out there to say, you shouldn't even worry about buying your own home. You should always rent it because that money that you would have put mortgage, you can go invest other places. And my thought is, yeah, but that's your home. And your home is not a financial transaction as much as it's a place you live. And it should be something that fits you, fits your lifestyle, that you can personalize. You shouldn't, the problem with always renting a place that you live instead of having your own is you always have to get permission to paint, change the colors, put holes in the walls, make any additions, put a pool in the back. You can't just do that on your own. And the person that owns it at any time can change their mind and say, out you go, I'm going to move in myself. So I don't necessarily agree with that part of it. I understand financially it makes perfect sense to do that, but emotionally it doesn't. So I believe if it's your own personal home and your family's going to live there, there's a place for the emotion and envisioning that lifestyle, because it's where you're going to build your family memories.
And the other side of that coin is that's a very black and white investment strategy. So second to that is, as you mentioned, your family, they're happy there, etc. What is the value of a happy relationship? It is half of your money
and stability, knowing that there's a 30-day move notice.
Totally. So I'm not saying that's a cause for everybody, but objectively you can say it makes no sense to buy coffee. Sure, it doesn't. It makes way more sense to brew your own beans and do what you got to do. How worth is that time? It's not equal to everybody. And I will argue that there are many people who are way better off because they live the way they want to than the way they should.
Yeah. And we are not strictly, physical beings. We're emotional, mental beings. And all that has to be in check. And a lot of times the lifestyle you have is what helps you be more productive, where you actually can do better on the financial side, because you have your house that's your haven and you have place for your family, and that makes you more productive in doing the other things you do. You've got a stable background and a good support structure. So I'm a big fan of, do what works for you. And the reason I say that is a lot of people, and they treat every home purchase as if it's an investment. Okay, we're going to move in here, but then we're going to sell it in a few years for the appreciation. And then you can't hang anything on the wall because there's holes in it.
Yeah.
You can't paint anything. You can't change anything. And that's no way. And pretty soon, your kids are only there for 18 to 20 years and they're gone.
Yeah.
So, and then their whole life, they couldn't put their pictures up on the wall or, that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, and that's why what you're doing is you're preemptively showing people this is the way you could live in this home.
Right. And so the thing about, residential real estate, it's its own animal. A lot of people who in real estate who they kind of do run the numbers, but in residential real estate, it is a very emotionally driven business. And so one of the things that we're seeing is there's a lot of economic changes happening. They've been happening. The question will be, how will all things be affected by the possibility of a buyer shifted marketplace? And so what we're looking at too in our business is, if the buyers become in control, how will that change our presentation model? Will that change how we approach them? Will we change what we give them, what we allow? Like how will we do that? Because there's already a lot of people play residential real estate like they're at Vegas playing blackjack. They really do. And if I ever talk to a seller and say, I don't really want to sell yet, I think it's going to be higher later, but that comes to an end. And so what's happening now is that there is a consideration for, is it time for us to take our money off the table, which is starting to increase some inventory.
Okay, so with that, we're going to have to go to another break. When we come back, I want to ask you about some of the market changes you see coming down the pipe. This is Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We are talking to Brian Fox. He is one of the real men of real estate, and he is an Orange County real estate broker. We'll be right back.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services, including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing, and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
This is Steve Matley. Join me every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations radio talk show. I spent decades as a professional construction manager, business owner, real estate developer, and a college educator, and I enjoy learning new things from other people. We talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, but we cover a diverse range of other topics as well. Some of the topics we've discussed in the past few months include real estate investing, leadership, higher education, ADUs, marketing using technology, multifamily rental properties, business strategy, entrepreneurship. You never know who may show up or what they may talk about, so join us right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio. Hi, this is Steve Matley. As a construction professional, I know the importance of selecting the right contractor for the job. Power Solar employs only professional installers. Power Solar will provide a knowledgeable consultant to help analyze your current electric bill, identify site placement, and correct solar technology for your home. Contact KCAA Producer at gmail.com for a free financial savings proposal with no obligation, or call 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Again, that's KCAA Producer at gmail.com or 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We are with Brian Fox today. I was going to say in the studio, but we're not. He's in his place and I'm in my place, and we're doing this remotely right now. The beauty of modern technology. Isn't that great? So we are talking about the real estate market. When we left off, we were talking about some of the shifts in the market. Brian had mentioned moving from a seller-driven market to a buyer-driven market. Now, there's a lot of people out there saying a lot of different things. There's articles, there's blogs, there's people talking, and a lot of different information. Brian, let's get your take on where you see the market going and what you're seeing. And remember, just a reminder to our listeners out there, there is the national real estate stuff, but real estate is a very local market thing. Okay, so what's in one place, the national may affect the local, but local real estate markets are very, very different around the country. So you have to look at the big picture, then you have to look at a regional picture, then you have to look at your local picture. Brian's pretty up on most of it. So Brian, go ahead and tell us what you see with the market and what's changed.
Sure. So just before break, we were talking about how people play the residential real estate market. And the reality is a lot of people think they know exactly what's going on. And so they have this thing where they're like, it's like they're playing roulette or they're playing blackjack at Vegas, and they have their money down and they're winning. And so what happens with all of us when we're in Vegas and we're winning, we see no reason to leave the table because we're winning. Why would you do that? You only leave the table as you start losing, maybe, unless you want to try win some more. So the way that people do real estate, residential, from my experience, regardless of what area you're in, is they all think whatever's going on now will continue until you figured it out. And
that is the history of humans, is we always assume that whatever's going on is never going to end, good or bad.
Correct. And so what's going on now is we've had that for a better part of 10, 12 years now. And we've had some dominoes start to line up against us. And most people think it's just real estate. Real estate is like gold and silver. It's a thing that people spend money on when they have money. That's not, other than it, people making money in real estate for the sake of it, it's not where money comes from. And so when an average person, let's call them a policeman, a firefighter, let's say they make X number of dollars a year, and food and gas, travel, all that stuff doubles in value, and the real estate values are not doubling and tripling as well, they're not going to be as inclined to sell and buy something else. So what I see happening is, I've already started to see this, areas where, let's say there were 20 homes on the market, let's say Banana City, doesn't matter, 20 homes in the market, in 3 or 4 weeks has already become almost double and triple that. Because people who have been holding off thinking, well, we have more time, it's no big deal, are now saying, oh, so the cards are starting to turn. Well, maybe we should go ahead and just put the plan in action. Let's get out of here. And we've noticed some of that. I think we're going to see more of it. Rates have been going up. I'm not a person who says because rates are going up, real estate's going down. It's not that. It's a combination of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different things, 7 different things, all related to how much money we all have to spend on a daily basis and what the priorities are. What do we really want to do? Because if you're not selling within this market now, at some point, it's going to be 10 to 15 years before you see a similar price if we do go into a buyer-focused market and now you're competing for the buyers who are left, if that makes sense.
Okay. Now, when we look at, there's a lot of different aspects to all this stuff. And again, it's going to be in different areas or different things. A lot of times when we read articles on where the market's going, it's on a national basis, and it includes everything from the hinterlands of North Dakota to downtown Los Angeles, and everything in between. And so obviously those are very different markets with very, very different influences. One thing I will say, if you're in an area, the populated areas, you're in populated California, so Bay Area, LA, Orange County, San Diego. If you're in the populated areas of the East Coast, New York, New England, those areas. Historically, here in Southern California, for example, historically, regardless of cycles, real estate has increased in value about 15, it's about doubled about every 15 years is what it's done. It's about doubled every 15 years since the end of World War II. In between there's been a lot of ups and downs. There's been dives in the market, there's been spikes in the market, and all kinds of flat areas. But on the average, so a lot of it has to do with what is your long-term outcome or goal. If you are looking to hold something long-term, it really doesn't matter when you buy it in the cycle, because you could buy it, if you look at where the low cycle was versus where the low is the next time around, the low next time around is much higher than the low was last time. The highs are the same way. If you are looking for the short term, kind of day trading real estate, more or less, flip stuff, that makes a huge difference, because you're going to, if you buy top of the market and you're trying to sell a few, year after everything hit the tank, that's not going to work. So a lot of it is your outcome. And so depending on what you're looking at in the market, I see if the market goes into decline, basically flips don't work anymore. They just can't. You can't do enough value add to offset if there's any value. On the other hand, if you're looking for a long-term rental hold in an area that has historically very strong rental market, and those are different. The further you get out from the job base, the more likely the vacancy rate when things start turning. The closer you into the cities, the more that stays pretty stable. And so a lot of it goes to your strategy, what your objectives are. And there is true that any point in the market, you can find a way to make money, going down or going up.
sorry, Steve, I want to add something to what you said. Yes, that's absolutely right. So what we, our generation over the last 3 or 4 in a row have gotten very used to is rapid inclines and declines.
Flips.
And
Yeah.
so we're talking about that in a form of generality, but the reality is that the reason why someone may say, well, I don't want to buy something because it's going to go down in value is because unlike our grandparents, we're not buying for the long term. Typically, we're buying for the next 5 years. And the idea of a starter home, which I don't know where that came from, but this idea of a starter home is definitely nothing that came from our grandparents.
Came from home builders who build move-up homes.
Yeah, my grandparents and everyone's grandparents I know still live in the house they bought when they were 18.
Well, the starter homes, what they bought and what they ended up with was a home with a couple of rooms added on later.
Yeah, so stuff like that. So
Yeah.
the reality is that in the last couple economic cycles, it took about 10 to 12 years for a full recovery from previous price paid. So if only if the buyer's market does kick in and it does decline, it's probably not going to decline to the levels it was the previous decline. It's going to find a new high from previous low from now, and that will be the new place it adjusts from. But again, this is totally hypothetical. The dominoes have not fallen yet. It's just these are the things to work on.
But and also, we are not in the same situation we were when we had the last high in the cycle.
Absolutely not.
People, because I've heard people say, oh, it's just like it was in 2004. Oh, baloney. I was around in 2004. 2004, 2005, we had record high consumer debt. We don't have that right now. We had the interest rates were actually still fairly low. Now, when you look at interest rates, they're going up. But if you expand that graph to beyond what the interest rates have been over the last 2 or 3 years and expand it to what have the interest rates been over the last 40 years, you'll find out we're still historically pretty low. It's still not bad at all. Although going up every time it goes up a little bit, it knocks some people out of qualifying to buy a home. That's true. I think the biggest factor on home affordability isn't the interest rates. It's much more the availability. And what you're saying is if more things come on the market, that actually helps that problem. That actually, so when you say that, 2 to 3 times as many homes are now on the market, that's true. But we're comparing that to historically astronomically low numbers on the market where, you pull up listings and you're lucky to find 10 to 12 listings in a pretty good sized population area. Right. Historically, that's not true. Usually there's 3 or 4 pages of those things that you have to roll through. So it can double and triple and still be very, very low inventory. For sure.
And so the main point of this is that, rates went from 2.5% to 5%. It's not the worst thing in the world.
And 5% is pretty low historically.
Yeah.
It's just a lot more than 2. Yeah.
And the idea of predicting what's going to happen next, I mean, it's impossible to really put together. But something that would look like is that if there's more homes available, there's a little bit less buyers each price matrix available. It's going to make it a bit more of an honest market, more negotiability on both sides. It won't be seller driven. If it dips farther, it'll be buyer driven. But in the interim, it's going to be of even trade. And that goes back to the previous statement of what is the value you are presenting to the marketplace. If you are presenting the accurate value of the property, you have less to worry about than someone who says, well, I'm a seller, you should pay this for my house. That market is probably a bit depleted.
So don't base it on Zillow pricing?
No, unfortunately, Zillow has no concept in the algorithm on upgrades and desirabilities. And as you mentioned, floor plans, they can't calculate that.
Well, they were in the height of, the highest priced market, they were overpaying ridiculously.
And that's why their program went drastically out of business.
Exactly. Well, and people say that's the future of it. Well, okay. Well, that also doesn't give me a lot of faith in AI because if it can't predict a home price, I don't want it driving my car.
I hope it's the future because then they'll go to business and everybody else can have their properties.
Yeah, exactly. And having a more active market, having more inventory just means the market's a little more active, and that's actually a good thing for everybody. It doesn't mean the prices are going to go down through the floor. It just means they'll correct a little bit. And when people say it's dropping, it's not so much dropping as the percentage of increase is going down. It's getting down to where it's not continually at those ridiculously high year over year appreciations. It's starting to stabilize a little bit. From 2010 to 2020. We built less homes than we had in any of the 5 decades prior to that. but the
Yep.
population kept growing. And so there is still a huge supply and demand gap, which has got to be corrected as a part of this. That has to be absorbed. That doesn't mean it won't be a downturn. This means that's got to be absorbed in it. We got to go to another break. When we come back, we'll talk a little more about some more about real estate and get into a couple of questions I have for you. This is Brian Fox, who's our guest today, real estate broker out of Orange County. If you want to connect with Brian, he's at 714-348-1085. 714-348-1085. Fox Real Estate Group, Brian Fox. He is located in Costa Mesa in Orange County, but serves all of Southern California area. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We'll be right back on Building Solid Foundations after this short break.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
This is Steve Matley. Join me every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations radio talk show. I spent decades as a professional construction manager, business owner, real estate developer, and a college educator, and I enjoy learning new things from other people. We talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, but we cover a diverse range of other topics as well. Some of the topics we've discussed in the past few months include real estate investing, leadership, higher education, ADUs, marketing using technology, multifamily rental properties, business strategy, entrepreneurship. You never know who may show up or what they may talk about, so join us right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio. Hi, this is Steve Matley. As a construction professional, I know the importance of selecting the right contractor for the job. Power Solar employs only professional installers. Power Solar will provide a knowledgeable consultant to help analyze your current electric bill, identify site placement, and correct solar technology for your home. Contact kcaaproducer@gmail.com for a free financial savings proposal with no obligation, or call 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Again, that's kcaaproducer@gmail.com or 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We are talking with Brian Fox today. Brian Fox is a real estate broker out of Orange County, Costa Mesa area. And we've been talking about home design, talking about strategies for staging and selling homes, talked about where we think the market might be going in the near future, guesstimates only. Brian, this one is one that's a big can of worms, and obviously we're not going to do it justice in the short segment we have left, but I do want to get your influence because you live in the center of the media for the world, right? Mm-hmm. LA Orange County is the world headquarters for pretty much all media, right? Entertainment business and everything. So how do we see the influence of media in real estate as far as, there's social media, there's news media, there's movies, there's television shows, HGTV, DIY, all this kind of stuff. How do you see that affecting people's decisions and behaviors when it comes to this?
I would say that the biggest impact has to do with perception of idealistic personalities. So like if you saw certain actor or actress and this was the way their home was designed, you'd say, well, I want to find that because I like the way their house looked. So it's the value that we place upon those things. So like the Chip and Joanna Gaines out of, Waco, Texas, they have a DIY show that it's called Fixer Upper. That became a very popular show. People really liked it. I haven't watched a lot of them, but they do a lot of modern farmhouse, and there's a lot of modern farmhouse around there. So the way that we attach value to what we see, we then go and try and find that.
Is that why the barn doors became popular inside all these
Yeah,
homes?
for sure. I can't say that they're specifically it, but yes, barn doors, shiplap. I mean, white, like
The
powder white paint.
gas piping
Yep,
fixtures. Yeah,
industrial piping fixtures, industrial piping, shelving, all of that stuff has become very, very, very popular. And you know, it doesn't look bad. It looks good. It's actually nice, but it's where you saw it and the value you put to it. Good.
but it'll be the most dated looking thing in about
Yes.
another 10 years.
Perfect example is Spanish colonial. Spanish colonial all over Southern California was very popular on the last boom.
Okay, white stucco, red tile roof,
Yes,
flat
white stucco,
iron,
red tile. Yep.
brown
Rounded
trim.
arch doorways. Yep, all of that. Gold, desert gold, granite. Yes, all of that. Newport Coast is a very popular area, very expensive area here in Orange County, and that's all they built. And now that's all they have. There's nothing to change because everything is Spanish, is like this Spanish look, and it was cool 20 years ago, and now it's not even desirable. I think modern farm will probably be like that in the next 10 to 15 years, but yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, everything goes in design trends. Design is a trendy business, whether it's auto design, fashion design, or whatever design you're doing, home design. It's anything that's artistic and design related goes in trends, and
Yeah.
it goes by phases.
Yep, 100%. Based on decades, there's certain things that look really good. Everyone does them, and then no one likes them, and they move on, and you have to fix those things 10 years later.
So if I went to Home Depot right now, I cannot find a swag light fixture anywhere.
Well, it depends on what you mean swag. Like
The one with the chain that came up the wall and then swung out to a hook and then the light.
Yeah.
Those were called swag fixtures.
You could
And that
find
was 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. They were everywhere.
So they have those, but they're not meant to be installed like that. Now they have cap covers that go over the cord, so you don't see the cord. It just follows the wall.
Yeah, but it used to be had the nice gold chain that swooped down. And yeah,
Gold chain is
you
gone.
can't find those anymore.
No more gold chain.
Yeah, so everything goes in these funny little trends.
Yep.
If you go into a home built before the 1990s, you will not find a place to install a ceiling fan anymore. They didn't put them in.
No, and there was a time where there was no lights above you. You'd have an obscure light switch in that room, and you put a lamp in it, and you click the switch on the wall, it would turn the lamp on.
Oh, and I remember the lamps that were the single pole with the springy thing on them that you'd wedge in between the floor and the ceiling.
Yep.
And those don't work in today's homes because with the 9 to 10 foot ceilings, those don't work anymore.
No. Yeah. So like there's a lot of modern revival right now. So a lot of kind of this modern farmhouse meets modern is a very popular product today.
Yeah, it is. Okay, and then you mentioned some of the personalities that are out there. We have an idea of what a real estate expert is based upon watching TV, and sometimes we find out they're not as much of an expert as we would like to think.
Sure.
And that reality shows are in fact heavily scripted.
Yeah. So oddly enough, without naming a bunch of names, I actually I have a friend of mine who is married to a producer in LA who is associated with a couple of the major real estate TV shows. And they, without making this too confusing, they sold his house on the show for the episode. And at the end of it, they asked him if he actually wanted to sell his house. He said, "No, I just gave you my house so you could shoot your show, but you guys got to go." So the point was that the whole scene was completely scripted. The house wasn't for sale.
House was not for sale.
None of the negotiation happened. No, it was all very much because they needed to sell a house on the show, which just goes to show you the stuff that you see. And I can't say all of it, but some of it is, we need this to shoot. This is a show that gets good ratings. Let's wrap this up. It doesn't necessarily mean those people are actually industry professionals necessarily.
And then they show you the dollars and cents. Purchased this much and negotiated this much rehab, sold, this much profit, and you find out the house never actually changed hands.
That happened actually. So check this out. One of my family members lived in a neighborhood where a house was being flipped by one of a very major couple team. And I saw the house sell on TV. And so when I walked by, I'm like, wait, I know that house. That's sold like a month and a half ago. I saw the episode and it still had the lockbox on it and it was vacant. So I could go in. I'm like, this still shows active. What happened? And then that's when I was like, oh my God, that was a total farce. None of that
They
happened.
probably shot multiple endings and decided which
They
one had
shot
the
the
better,
show.
the better review from the test audience.
That house sold 6 months later. I watched it. Sold 6 months later. Never shot, never sold during the show.
Yeah, that's so. I would encourage listeners. I always tell people, do not, if you want to get into real estate investing, don't do what they show you on TV, because that is not the way to learn. Go to a real estate investor association or club and talk to people really doing it, or find a good
Unbeknownst to-
agent that knows how to work with investors. Yeah.
I've never, in 22 years of doing this job, I've never met anybody who who got in a private jet and then closed a real estate deal in the air before they got to Barbados. It doesn't work that
That's
way.
a fact. All right, we got to wrap up. This is Building Solid Foundations Radio. I want to thank Brian Fox for being my guest today. Always great talking with Brian. If you want to connect with Brian, 714-348-1085, 714-348-1085. As I've known Brian since we did real men in real estate together. He knows his stuff. He's a great guy to work with, and he's an agent with broker with integrity. I'm your host, Steve Matley. Don't forget to catch us every Thursday, 3 o'clock on KCAA, or catch us on Roku, Amazon Fire, Android, or your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next week. And between now and then, go do something different.